Good Moto morning, beautiful people. Welcome to Kraken's Garage. I'm your host, Eric, and on today's episode, we're going to do part 3 of Ann's excellent adventures. Today's episode is about the Yamaha Heritage Special, the XS650 Twin. Let's talk about that. Let's get cracking.
The next bike, I've discovered twins, and I went and looked at another Yamaha twin, which was called the Heritage. It was a coal black bike.
Wasn't it the Virago Heritage?
No, Virago's a totally different bike. We'll come to that.
Okay.
The Heritage was a fairly tall bike, but it was light, so I could handle the weight, and my feet did reach the ground, which is, with a woman, is always the problem, always. And I hadn't yet discovered that bikes could be lowered in various ways, but at this point, the bike fit me okay. It was beautiful. It was coal black, and Yamaha had, they had put some sort of a plated brass-looking finish on all the accessories on the bike in gold on the black. And I'm sure that a Harley rider would have just laid down and turned up his toes at the sight of the thing. But I thought it was the most beautiful bike I'd ever seen.
They had that Midnight Special series that was black and gold. Was
it
one of those?
It was one of those,
Gotcha.
Exactly. It was called the Heritage. So we bought the 900 and off I went. And after some months, we decided it was our anniversary, our 20th anniversary, and we wanted to go on a trip. We hadn't ever been on any kind of a trip with a motorcycle yet. So Carmel was a destination in California, about 350 miles north of LA.
Right.
And this is Southern California. So we planned this trip. I think it was 4 days, took off on a Friday. We're going to go back to work, both of us, the following Tuesday, but we had the time. So we rode up to Carmel and we took a motel room because they had a beautiful drive on Pebble Beach that was 17 miles long. You couldn't take a motorcycle on it. A lot of rich people had gorgeous houses, and movie stars were out at Pebble Beach. They didn't want motorcycles around them, so we rented a car and did the Pebble Beach drive for 17 miles and had lunch and yada. And then the next day we left Carmel to start home again. And it must have been fairly cold weather because I had my silk long johns on, under my jeans, under my leather chaps. And I had on a leather jacket that I had bought in Italy on a trip over there. It wasn't a motorcycle jacket, but it was fitted and it did the job. Because clothing was a problem for women.
Still is to a certain extent.
You couldn't buy clothing to fit women, and if you didn't have any hips, fortunately, you could get away with the men's small. But, you know, you needed rain gear, and you needed leather gear, and you needed things that weren't too long in the legs. And things had to be cut and shortened and altered and everything. And it was just a pain in the neck. So I had bought this leather jacket in Italy, not a motorcycle jacket, but leather. And I was wearing it this morning when we came out of Carmel, and it was cold. I came around a bend. I was in the lead. That's the way Flip liked it. And there was a cattle guard. I had never ridden over a cattle guard, and I was in a curve when the cattle guard suddenly appeared. And I straightened up the bike so I could go over the cattle guard vertical, not laid over at all. And then the road curved, and it put me out on the shoulder, and the bike went down on the gravel, and it slid through a barbed wire fence and down in a pasture, downhill. And I slid down the shoulder, helmet filled up with gravel. Thought I was blind at first, opened the visor and all this gravel dropped out of the helmet. And it knocked the wind out of me. I wasn't hurt, but I just was shocked. And I was lying there And Flip rushed over and said, are you okay? And I said, yeah, I'm fine. Just leave me here until I can get my wind, and then I'll get up and I'll be okay. How's the bike? Go look at the bike, because I'm thinking already, we're a long way from home. If that bike won't run, what the hell are we going to do? So he goes down the field to the bike, and a car pulled up and stopped. And this fella got out, and I'm listening. I can hear this conversation, and he says, do you need some help, fella? And Flip said, yeah, help me get this bike up out of this field. So there's a pause, and they go down, and they drag the bike up the field and under the barbed wire fence and set it up on the shoulder. And the guy says, is there anything else you need? Flip says, no, that's fine, thanks a lot. And the fellow said, well, what about her? I'm still lying there on the shoulder. And Flip says, no, she says, she's a nurse. She says, leave her lying there. She's okay. So the guy says, okay, and he gets in the car and he drives off.
And body's laying on the shoulder?
Yeah, I don't know what on earth he thought. But I got up and I tottered back to Flip and I said, why did you let him go? I hadn't even stood up yet. I might have had a broken leg for all you know, or a broken arm. What were you thinking? But I didn't. As it turned out, I'd had broken a corner off an upper condyle on one of my knees. Leg hurt like hell, but it worked. So he boosted me on this bike. But before we left the scene of the accident, the windscreen on the Heritage had been busted into probably a dozen pieces, and they were spread all over this field. And I'm walking around the field, and I'm picking up the pieces of the broken windscreen. And Flip said, honey, don't bother, it's gone. And I said, no, I think I can tape the pieces together. And we're like 350 miles from home, and I need that windscreen. So I can get a new one at home, but I just want to get home with the pieces from this one. So he said, all right, and we picked up everything we could find and put it in a saddlebag. That day we pulled into some small town, and I went in a hardware store and bought a great big roll of 3-inch wide clear packing tape. And I fitted all those pieces together and taped it on the front and on the inside, and I got most of that windscreen back, taped it to the handlebars, and the thing sat there and vibrated and flapped all the way back to Los Angeles. But we quit early, about 4:30, and I wanted to take a hot shower, and I was hurting in all kinds of places you can imagine. And Flip went out and said, I'm going to find something for us to eat for supper. And he came home after a while, and he had a pizza in the carton zipped inside his jacket.
This is your anniversary, right?
Anniversary. He has a bottle of sherry for us to suck on, sits this on the table, and he has a get well card, and inside it says, and I mean that, like tomorrow morning. I think he thought I was going to wake up in the morning and not be able to roll
You'd have
out
rigor mortis in the morning.
Yeah, rigor mortis in the morning. But that was the funny part of that whole accident. And we got home okay. I made it back. It was true grit. I think that's when I started learning that if you're going to ride with the guys and be one of the guys and do this sport, you got to take the good with the bad, or the bad with the good, and don't whine and don't complain, and stiff upper lip it when things go wrong, because they're going to go wrong. And you're going to be wet, you're going to be cold, you're going to be tired, you're going to be coming off the bike if there's an accident like that. And you just can't be a complainer and a whiner and throw in the towel.
And that concludes part 3 of Ann's Excellent Adventures, and I hope you enjoyed today's episode. We will continue to release videos as I can knock them out each week. Ann and I both would like to thank each and every one of you for your very kind replies to each of these videos. They mean a lot to me as well as to Ann. Thank you for joining us today. Peace.